I'm Felina.
And I'm Summer.
And you are listening to Broken Broken.
Because we're both.
The podcast about living your best life by getting real.
Hey, broken people.
It's Felina.
And this is Summer.
How are you doing today? Before we get started, I just wanted to plant the seed. I know the Women's March isn't until January, but I am looking for volunteers or people who might be interested in helping do a large chalk display in protest. I've got some friends who have done this in LA and California before, and they now live here, and we're hoping to get organized and get in touch with. We need to get in touch with the organizers of the Oklahoma City branch of the march. And I'm going to be working on that, but we're looking for volunteers to help work on that. So, and I don't know if you've not seen a chalking before, just like Google protest chalking, because it's pretty fantastic and can make it's cool to see all these people come together and get these great shots. And Oklahoma really needs that national media attention because these things turn out really awesome and huge. So hoping to make that happen, and if anybody's interested in trying to help organize that or be involved in that, let us know. So
I know we've got a lot of artists who listen. Now's your time to step up.
Yes. But on that note, we've got an amazing woman here with us today. This is Alexis, and she is also a family member of mine, but she's got a great story, and so I just wanted to have her on to share that with us. So welcome.
Hi guys.
Thank you for being here, Alexis.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yes. I just kind of want to let you tell people what you want about yourself.
So I have a pretty broad story. I was born and raised in Oklahoma and grew up in a broken household from teenage parents and struggled with family and faith and religious cults and just ridiculousness of things that children shouldn't have to go through at an early age, and it really caused me to struggle in finding myself in my early years. So I started becoming very sexually active at an early age because that's how I introduced myself into the gay world at that time in my life. And I did a lot of Craigslist ads, and I was way too young to be doing that, and I look back on it now and think how crazy I was and how reckless my behavior was. But so that was the first closet I came out of because I got caught.
For our listeners, you were born Alex Sanders.
Right. I was born Alex Sanders, and now I'm Alexis White. So my mini closets, I'll just tell all three at the very beginning. I came out as gay, and then 2 years later I came out as HIV positive to my family, and then it's been 2 years ago now that I came out as transgender to my family also. So with each closet, there have been certain people who grow with everything that goes on. My dad and stepmom are the prime examples of that, who have just gone above and beyond to learn what they need to learn. That way we are more together than we were when I first came out as gay, because we know how to handle these things better now, and we've figured out how to communicate and educate ourselves to be understanding of each other, and not just me expect them to be understanding of me, but me be understanding of the change that they're going through when I tell them something like this and the adjustments that they have to make in their mind. But when I got caught doing all of my promiscuous stuff on Craigslist, so I was kind of forced out of the closet.
How old were you when you were doing this Craigslist?
14.
Okay.
So way too young.
It's a little dangerous here.
Yeah, and way too young, and looking back on it, I was sleeping with men who were like 4 times my age, which is like gross, and
I want to have a conversation with those men.
I know.
Me too. Like, I wish I could remember those men, because I wish that I could message them and be like, why did you think it was okay to do that? You saw me sneak out of my bedroom window. You picked me up.
You know I was a child.
You knew that I was not old enough to be sleeping with you.
Wow.
But beyond that, I then found out that I had HIV, and there was a time in there that I moved out of my parents' house. I'm not going to necessarily say I was kicked out. It was definitely mutual on everybody's side. We just kind of decided that it wasn't worth the fight with each other anymore, and we all just went our separate ways for a little while. And I fell into some heavy drug use and partying all the time, in a different side of the community, that with friends that I had sought out that weren't actual friends. They were just passing through my life to teach me lessons. And after I had been on drugs for about 6 months, I had gotten down to about 105 pounds, and I was still 6'3", and I definitely looked sick, and I had blisters all over my face and all over my hands. And I had a friend who said, "You really have to go get tested, and I know that you don't want to hear that, but I have HIV and you have to go get tested." And I did, and I knew, but I didn't know when I went in to get tested, so I was just kind of prepared. And the guy who tested me in Oklahoma City is still a very good friend of mine, and he threw the test in the trash, and he said, "Okay, so what we're going to do now is schedule a doctor's appointment." And he made it so easy, and it was not convoluted with any kind of emotion. He just kind of hopped right into, like, here's what we're going to do about it now, instead of how to work through all the feelings. So it didn't really hit me for a few weeks, and then it really hit me, and I had some depression. And then very shortly after I found out that I had HIV, at a time in my life where I felt absolutely unlovable and absolutely disgusting.
And you were how old?
18. And I went to the Equality Center, the Cimarron Equality Center, when it was still there in Oklahoma City. It's actually just recently, the building that it was housed in has been demolished. But I met my husband, and I saw him from across the room, and I just kind of knew that he was super special, and we have kind of been inseparable ever since. But he really has taught me how to love myself. And even we moved to Palm Springs about 3 years ago, and just moved back to Oklahoma like a week ago. So before we had moved to Palm Springs, I had already started talking about the transition, maybe wanting to be something that I was going to do in my life. And from day one, my husband, Brandon, has always been supportive and has always said that I should do what makes me happy, and that if that is really what I need to do, why am I not doing it? Because I owe it to myself to be happy. And on our anniversary, our first year in California, I broke down at a really fancy restaurant in the middle of the restaurant, and I said, "I'm going to transition. We don't live anywhere where I'm trying to please anybody." And that's what it took for me. It took me moving away from my grandparents and my mom and all of those people in my life that wanted me to be a certain way, to just not
Have
be
to
a
live
part
up to
of
somebody else's
right. I was
expectations of
living to me,
Mhm.
and authentic to me, and it was the first time I had ever done that, and it was so freeing to just not care. And now we're at a place where we're back in Oklahoma, and I'm still standing my ground with those things. Like, we live in small town USA. We live out in Piedmont, Oklahoma, and when we go to
that is small.
the little grocery store out there, when people stare at me, if I'm going to be known as that big giant trans woman, I'm also going to smile and be known as that big giant trans woman who always smiles, even though all of these people just continually stare at her. Like, I just always want to push forward as light from this point, because there's so much life is what you make it, even like in all of these journeys. And it's not easy at all, but it's also does me absolutely no good to sit and focus on any of that stuff in life, because I don't progress in life at that point. And it took me a long time to figure that out. I felt like I was on a hamster wheel forever, that I had come out as gay, and I still couldn't understand why I wasn't happy, and why I was always depressed, and why I didn't feel like myself. And so moving to California completely reshaped that in my mind. And having a husband who is so supportive, and from loving me with HIV when I very first had HIV, and being in a positive negative relationship and never having any shame in that, or telling anybody that, or helping me with HIV and AIDS organization work and things like that, and just standing behind me and supporting me 100%, to supporting me 100% just to be who I am and who makes me happy, because he fell in love with me. Hearts not parts, if that's stupid. I think that that's such a silly saying and so cliche, but it's so true. We fell in love with each other before, and it didn't change anything for us, because our hearts still match. And my dad, even though he wasn't the best at portraying advice to me when I was growing up, he didn't really know how. There are bits and pieces that I will always take away from my dad, and one of those was, be with somebody who makes you a better person. And I have always lived that motto in relationships, is if you're not with somebody who's making you grow as a person and making you a better person, you're with the wrong person. And my dad has always been that, you know, my dad didn't know how to be supportive at the beginning, but my dad has educated himself in such amazing ways. He never misses a beat. He uses all my preferred pronouns. When I told my dad I was trans, the only thing he said was, "You're still my baby boy, right?" Like, he just doesn't. He's like, "Okay, cool. You live your life." And
Well, I like that. Well, one, that you said that both him and your stepmom have grown with you in your journey, but also you told the story last night about your dad wanting photos of you for his office.
yeah, my dad's a
of
manager at a car dealership in a
that's
small
good.
town in Kansas.
And I mean, just knowing your dad, he seems like this very conservative Republican white dude, you know, like you.
So he's an Oklahoman.
Yeah.
Well, right.
Yeah.
But it makes me so happy that he's responded in such a positive, supportive
And
way.
he even found out through work that one of his car salesmen was transitioning outside of work but coming to work as a man, and he told her, he was like, "You come to work any way you want, and if anybody says anything to them, I'll beat their ass, I promise." So he's just that person who, like, my dad genuinely just wants people to be happy.
He does.
And
He's a good man.
and on both sides, I mean, I say that on both sides. My grandparents are members of church that is like crazy church, and my dad still supports their decision to believe in what they believe in and make their own decisions because it makes them happy. And that's something that maybe even I could work on. But he just really genuinely cares about people, and I hope that he passes that on to me and my little brother and sister. But they've done a great job of educating my siblings on wanting to know questions about my life or what's changing or anything like that. And I've just always had a really some kind of support system around me, even like we were talking about earlier, even when it feels like you don't have anybody. When I first found out that I had HIV, I was living with my dad's family, and they very soon after kicked me out and told me that I was being punished by God, and that
That hurts my heart.
I was never going to be forgiven, and my heart had hardened, and I had been marked like a lamb for slaughter, and I could never come to their house for dinner again, and I could never go to their church again. And Felina's mom actually happened to be there at that point in my life. Sorry, I'm getting all choked up now.
It's okay.
You can make me cry. I'm the one who never cries.
So my Aunt Mel was there, and she called me at every doctor's appointment that I had to go to and made sure that I was going to be okay, and that I could get to my doctor's appointment, and that I had people to talk to going through this. And she was just a huge instrumental part in that part of my life and keeping my sanity and what I was going to do, because it was such a major thing to find out at 18 years old,
Right.
especially in Oklahoma where there's no education on it. We really have to fix that.
Yeah.
Could
Well,
we
my mom.
please just talk to your kids about how to have proper gay sex if you think your kids are gay? Because
Yes.
it's like just
Or talk to them
super
even if you don't think they are, because you
important,
don't know what they're
right?
doing.
Yeah.
Like, it's just super important, and I know that my parents didn't know that they should have done that, but I didn't. I was young and thought I was invincible, and the same thing would have happened, but
Well, and my mom was a cancer nurse, and she treated AIDS patients and patients with HIV, and so you and I always, I felt a connection with you because I knew that my mom had helped you during that time in your life, and after she passed away, it was.
Well, she was the only person at the time. Even though my parents love me and accept me, and they don't care that I'm HIV positive, it doesn't even come up in conversation actually ever at all. But she was the only person at that period in my life who, like, there was no surprise, there was no "I'm so sorry," there was
No judgment.
no judgment.
Right.
It was just, we're gonna get through this, and how are we gonna get through this, and what doctors are you going to, and when can you get appointments, and how can you get to your appointments, and can we get you housing somehow, and it was all of those things that, it wasn't focused on how I screwed my life up. It was how I was going to build my life with this being a part of my life. And I didn't have anybody like that except her for a few months, until people just really started realizing that, it wasn't, like I said, my parents are very good. they use the internet a lot. They know how to educate themselves.
Good for them.
You know,
So many people refuse to do that.
Right. When they have a question about something, they try to figure it out on their own. My dad figured that out a long time ago, because even when you don't want to offend somebody with a question, if you catch them in the wrong mood, you always risk that possibility. And my dad will always Google it first and then ask me if he's correct. That way he at least seems somewhat educated about it, and I don't get upset because I feel like he's not being understanding. But I lucked out on that side. Not everybody does luck out and get to have a family as big as my family when they go through all of these things in life that, you know, support their partner and me. And that's the super cool part about even moving back to Oklahoma from California. Everybody keeps apologizing, and we moved here because we wanted to move back here. We didn't move back here for any other reason than we just wanted to be back in the city because the city's changing, and you know, we just, our hearts felt like we wanted to come back home. And when people say sorry, I literally have such a better support system out here and such a better set of genuine people who care about me than I would have ever had in California. And you know, there's something to really be said about that, even though it is Oklahoma.
We're gradually entering into the 18th century.
A little purple.
Hey, we just legalized medical marijuana, so there's that. We're not the last.
I know. My grandma was
It's
like,
incredible.
For the first time.
my grandma was like, you can buy weed and you can buy beer and wine in the grocery store.
We
Of
finally
course
did
you
that.
moved back home. Like, yeah, thanks.
Well, it does make it a little, like, it softens the blow.
Right.
Yes, it's more
to all the
tolerable.
other politics. Like, we've got to be able to.
I did go to 7-Eleven last night to buy wine before I came over here.
Yeah.
That's the first time I've ever done that in Oklahoma.
I still haven't even done that.
I haven't either. I haven't had to go buy anything since.
Well, I like instinctually went and bought wine on Wednesday night. I had a dinner party and I went to a liquor store. I just didn't even think about it.
Right.
Yeah, I just instinctually was like, oh, I'll just go to the liquor store. And then when I got there, I was like, oh yeah, I guess I could have just gone to Sprouts or wherever.
Right, it's right there.
Yeah.
You'll
So,
get used to it.
Yeah. Very quickly, I'm sure.
So you said earlier, and then we got off track, that you were kind of forced out of the closet because you got caught with your teenage antics.
Well,
How did that happen? What happened?
Always forced out.
Oh,
well,
every time?
Well, in high school, to like my peers, I had
Uh-huh.
a friend who was flamboyantly gay in high school, and he was out, and everybody loved him, and I was not, and he outed me to our whole class, and that was like a devastating blow at school because I was an awkward kid, and I didn't know who I was, and I was that kid who was friends with everybody but didn't have best friends.
Right.
Like, I knew everybody and could
The
say
shallow
hello,
relationships.
but I never had like the group to sit at lunch, or you know, I never had that in high school at all. So when he outed me, it like completely devastated me. But then while I was at my grandparents' house, my grandparents are very naive. It's the reason why my parents got pregnant in high school, and they didn't learn from that. And I was at their house one day, and I used to use my grandma's cell phone to get online, and I was an idiot and didn't cover my tracks, and you know, got caught, and it was devastating, and my parents didn't know how to handle it, and they said things that were really hurtful instead of trying to help me figure out why this was what I was
Something
doing
that you
in
were
my
doing,
life.
right.
Instead
Right.
of trying to help me figure out why I thought that was okay, it just wasn't conducive for anybody to learn from the situation. It didn't help them at all become more understanding of the fact that I was gay. It didn't help me at all because I didn't really even understand what the gay community was, because
You
I
didn't
grew
know it
up so
existed.
sheltered.
I'm
like,
sure that there even
I
was a
didn't-
community.
I didn't even know what transgender people were until I was 18, probably. So I mean, I just grew up in a very backwards, closed-minded world with my grandparents, and I say that pretty openly now, and I don't have any judgment to them. They really do live by their word and their truth, and they apply it to their life. I just wish that they didn't feel like they had to apply it to my life. But they still use words like fag, and that's how they describe people on the TV, and they complain that they can't watch TV anymore because we're all taking over their television shows, and there's trans people and gay people everywhere, and
We've got Brandon over here,
Yeah.
like cheering.
Take it over.
So what?
Take on the world.
So, but I'll never forget. I'll never forget the day that it happened. I was supposed to go over to my grandparents, and my stepmom and I were not super close when I was growing up. Now she's one of my best friends, but we weren't super close when I was growing up. But my grandma, who is the crazy religious bigot, was my best friend and my end all be all, and we talked on the phone for like hours and hours and hours a day, and I spent every possible waking moment that I could at the woman's house. And I'll never forget going and knocking on Jennifer's door and saying it's time to go to Graham's, and her opening the door and telling me that I was not going anywhere ever again, and that I had been caught, and I knew exactly what I was talking about. She didn't want to look at me or talk to me, and I needed to wait until my dad got home, and I needed to go away. And I immediately had all these big, huge pits in my stomach, because not only was I having to tell my parents that I was gay, but my parents were reading these messages that you never want your parents to read.
Right.
I mean, I was talking about things that are like, even now, I would never want my parents to read that stuff. Like, I will always think that my dad, somewhere in the back of his mind, thinks about that still. And I don't want. I just.
They all
It's-
said the same things when they were.
Oh,
it
we
just,
all
like,
get there. We all
petrifies
get
me.
dirty, you know, it's fine.
But from that happening, that was the turning point in my life where just nothing fit together after that. My parents didn't know how to punish me for it, so after that happened, I was basically grounded until I moved out of my parents' house. And it wasn't necessarily for that one thing. It was
Like they didn't know what to do.
it was just constant groundation after constant groundation, which eventually backfired, because
Oh, of course.
eventually
Like it does.
I was
It
like,
always does. Yeah.
well, if I'm grounded for the next 2 years, I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Like, who cares? I can do whatever I want to do.
These
because,
punishments
like,
mean nothing.
I am
Right.
I'm getting
16
punished
years
anyway,
old
I might
and
as
I'm
well do
grounded
what.
for 2 years. I'll be
Yeah.
18, and I went in and out of the closet like a revolving door, though, to try to make my grandparents happy, and that was the first, really realizing to try to be who you were and trying to be happy with yourself. But I got into a relationship with a woman who was like 10 years older than me. She already had 2 kids. She got pregnant. I did such destructive things to my life because I didn't know who I was, and I didn't have anybody growing up to educate me on the fact that it was okay to be this way. And I have this struggle now when I talk to other family members, because they don't want me to be around in fear of how they're going to explain this to their kids. And I just don't think that there's anything to explain to your kids.
That was
Like,
going to be my question.
if-
I
if
don't
somebody-
understand what that means.
if
What
somebody-
are you explaining to the kids?
Yeah, I mean,
if your 4-year-old says, "Why is Alex dressed like that?" you just respond and you say, "Alex is dressed like that because it makes Alex happy."
Mhm.
Like, even if you can't grapple your mind around the pronouns, just use my name.
yeah.
Like, you don't even, there's a 4-year-old will be okay with that. I promise. They're not going to ask any more
Fair.
questions.
Yeah, so
And-
my daughter was here last
Right.
night, and she was cranky, and she went to bed early, and Jennifer, your stepmom, asked if she had any concerns about you or was confused, and I was like, no, she's just bored because there were no other kids around. Like, she didn't even
That's what I
ask.
do.
And I asked her, I was like, do you remember Alex? And she's like, yeah, kind of. And I was like, she's Alexis now, and, do you have any questions? No. Like, it just isn't something that they even think about,
Well, and
unless you teach them to,
and
because hate is taught.
I was about
Yeah.
to say, and I think
100%.
that's my frustration with family members like that is, and I tried to explain this to somebody I was talking to the other night. I had these struggles, and I couldn't find myself at 18 or 16 or whenever I needed to, because nobody ever allowed me to see any other point of view than one point of view. And regardless, in life, your kids are going to come across all kinds of people forever, and you can't control that. And eventually they'll either resent you because you never taught them and it's something that they identify with, or they'll wonder why you're so hateful because
Well-
they have met people that they go, these are good people, and I've been taught my whole life to avoid people like this, and they're no different than me at all.
Well,
That's me with my family.
Yeah.
I have a family like yours.
There's
And I'm
just,
Well, and it reminds me, there's this Khalil Gibran poem that my mom always read to me, and I love it. But your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of lives longing for themselves. and it goes on
Wow.
beyond that. But I mean, it's so easily forgotten by parents, and I'm a parent, so I have to remind myself of that my daughter is not, she's not mine. She is a life of her own, and she's going to be whoever she's going to be, and I have absolutely zero control over that. I can guide her, I can expose her to things, which is what I try to do, and teach her to think for herself, and to teach her that that's okay to think for yourself, and that you don't need to think what I think. You don't need to think what anybody else thinks. Think for you. And I don't know where I'm going with that, but I wish
That's
more
awesome.
people would raise their kids in that way, so that when they do grow up and they feel like they don't fit in somewhere like you did, or didn't feel like you had a community, didn't have any close friends, if you would have just felt like it was okay.
Well, yeah, I would have gone to GSA in high school. My high school had a GSA. I
Mhm.
could have gone and been a part of that had I not been taught that it was like
You were being
a
taught to hate
horrible
yourself.
thing. I mean, I was the biggest homophobe ever before I came out of the closet. I was mean. I was a bully. I said horrible things
Which
to my
is just
classmates.
so crazy, because when I was telling you last night, I knew you when you were 8, and I knew.
Right.
Well, and I asked my mom that question one time when she kind of acts surprised by this whole trans thing, and I have literally been traipsing around in makeup and heels and my grandma's clothes since I was like 2. This is not,
Not new.
a new thing, and they thought it was just kids being kids then, and that's all it ever was. But this has always been obvious. I was telling my stepmom the other day, a moment in my life that I will never forget is when she got pregnant with my little sister, and one of the bedrooms in the house was being turned into a nursery, and the closet had all of these skirts and all of these cute baby girl clothes in it. And I remember just going in there one day and just sitting on the floor with all of those skirts in my lap and just crying because I wanted to wear a skirt so bad, and that's how I felt. Like I had always identified as, I was definitely a very effeminate man way before effeminate boy, even as a child. But I had always identified more with the girls. I always wanted to do the girl things,
Whatever that means.
whatever
Quote
that
unquote,
means,
whatever that is, yeah.
But I wanted to be around, and since my parents had me in high school, I was also the only kid. I did not grow up with any other kids in my life. I was basically an only child. My little brother and sister are 10 and 12 years younger than me, and my mom's son is 19 years younger than me.
That's a big
So
gap.
I never lived with my siblings, really. I've always been kind of an only child, and that was hard enough in itself.
I'm not sure I understand.
Growing
Sorry, Siri just likes to randomly shout things in the middle of interviews.
I just-
And Brandon likes to just snort in the middle of things. We find it endearing.
But that was hard in itself because I didn't have anybody. I also didn't know how to be a kid and talk to kids when I was a kid because I was surrounded by adults my whole life. So in school it was so awkward to me because, and even now at 24, people all the time are like, "You're such an old soul," and I am. I get it. Like I do feel like I'm more like my parents' age half the time but I think it's because I just had to go at 16 and become an adult, and
You really
I
did.
just did everything that everybody does until 21 from like 16 to 17 and a half, and then
For
you know.
being so young, you really have gone through so much. I mean, you've lived a lot of life in your
Too much.
24 years of life. Yes.
Too much. I'm looking forward to us moving back home. Like we live out in the country right now on a farm, and I'm like, this simple life. Just give me this simple life. Just right here. Just let this keep happening right here for a little while, because this is what I need. No drama, no nothing. Just my simple farm life. And it's hard. It's hard to continue to trust people because in a community like this, you grasp so much for acceptance, especially before I had my dad and stepmom on board and I had family members who were really close to me. You grasp so much for acceptance from other people, and you let very toxic people become close in your life. And I mean, the man who made me go get tested for HIV was 60 something when he met me, and I was 17, and he would let me stay at his house on the weekends, and he would take me out to the gay bars, and there was never anything sexual involved at all that I later found out in life was grooming me for that and to be that. And I was his roommate for probably 4 years, so much so that even after Brandon and I met, Brandon moved in with us and I lived with him. And Brandon and I got a phone call one day shortly after we moved out of his house that he had been arrested and busted on charges of child pornography. And we were living with that. And it's so hard to keep, I feel like we just keep finding people like that, especially it's just so hard to know like who really genuinely wants you to be happy and support you and who has these hidden
Ulterior
nasty
motives,
motives
yeah.
with it. And you know, that makes an already hard life seem even more challenging because you just feel like you're constantly being hit in the face with things that are unheard of and unthought of, and this
And you're
doesn't
just
happen to
seeking
normal people,
acceptance
and
and
that
seeking
why
a
do they
community.
keep finding me?
Yeah.
Like, and it's very, I have the hugest, I have the biggest heart of anybody that I know, not to toot my own horn, I really do, to my own fault. I feel other people's pain more than I feel like they feel their own pain sometimes.
You're an empath.
And
you're going to
And
be a
that's hard.
target for narcissists and sociopaths. And I know this because I am an empath. And I am a target for narcissists and sociopaths.
They find us.
They seek you out. They seek your bleeding heart. So that because you make them feel good about themselves.
But it's a part of me that I also don't ever want to like let anybody
Don't
take
become
away
jaded.
from me,
No.
Right,
because I
yeah.
do like, but every time it stings just a little bit more, and you
Well,
like get
You
that
seem-
feeling just a little bit more that you're like, man, again, I let somebody do this to me again.
Got fooled again is what it feels like, at least whenever
Yeah.
it happens to me. I'm 30, almost 37, and I still struggle with that. But you seem very much more at peace than I've ever seen you. And, you know, you standing up with, I know you were telling me last night that your mom wanted you to come over only if you were dressed as a man. And you're at a point in your life where you're setting boundaries, which I commend you for, because I don't think at 24 I was able to set boundaries and say, no, like this is, I'm not doing that. I'm going to be true to myself. And to me, I find that to be incredibly strong and wise that you've figured out that you can set that boundary, and that's what's best for you, and that's okay to put you first.
It takes a lot of therapy.
Yes.
A lot.
Therapy's amazing.
And people teaching you coping skills to learn that my self-love and me loving myself is more important than my mom feeling comfortable for dinner. And I love my mom, and there's nothing my mom could ever say or do to me that would make me not love my mom. And your parents are your parents. You don't choose your parents. And my mom has done a lot of great things for me in my life, and I'm not judging her for struggling with this, like, at all. I hope that she can find ways to learn to cope with this and learn to get through it. And, you know, I strongly suggest anybody who hasn't gone on and watched Free Mom Hugs interviews by Sarah Cunningham, go do that. Go watch what it's like to be a conservative woman whose son comes out as gay and finds their way in their faith. And one thing she says that I just wish my mom could get to this point is she didn't lose her faith from that church to that pride parade. It only got stronger, and it only came in a different way. And, you know, she started realizing, and it's just super important to realize that, you know, all of these, my dad hates labels, hates them. When I was in high school, his number one question was, why does Alex have to be gay? Why can't you just be Alex? Like, why does it have to be gay all the time? And there's a sense of pride that comes with that he didn't understand at first, that, you know, you want to be proud of being gay, but there's also a certain amount of truth to it. As I've gotten older, and especially being a part of the trans community, I find this a lot, is I'm trans, but that does not define any circumstance in my life. It does not define me getting a job. It does not define my personality, who I am. And while it may be harder to get some of those things, me being trans doesn't eliminate the fact that those things are going to happen in life. I may have to look for them in a little bit different place, and I may have to be a little bit more optimistic and wait a little bit longer. But the trans thing has basically nothing to do with anything that I do in life besides me being uncomfortable because other people are uncomfortable. And when you get to the point where you're finally just not uncomfortable because you're happy being in your own skin, you just it all of those labels just kind of go away because they don't represent me. Being HIV positive or queer or trans, or I am still that same kid with a huge heart that I was when I was 8 years old. I really am. Like, I really am the same person that I have been my whole entire life. I've always had the same personality. I've always been a little bit emotionally crazy. I've always, like, nothing
It's
has
sweet.
changed. I have
You're
always
the
been
same sweetheart that I remember from you being very first introduced into this family. I mean, we both are stepchildren of this
We
family
are.
that has joined us together, and I remember first meeting, and you were and still remain just a sweetheart. You've just always been a big sweetheart.
And I'm not, and you know, and that's funny because when you see me, I don't look like a sweetheart, and I know that I don't look like
Yes,
a
you
sweetheart.
do.
I
I
have
think you
resting
do.
bitch face like no other,
Whatever.
and people are always afraid to come and talk to me, and I also have resting bitch voice. I don't know what it is about my voice, but people always think I'm angry. I think I got that one from Jennifer.
It's funny how
but-
our step parents
yeah.
can really become definitive of our personalities. My
Oh.
stepdad is our personalities are very similar.
I feel like
There is
I
no blood relation,
am
but I am
more
very
like
much like
Jennifer than I am any of the four of my parents. I feel like I don't feel like I'm Jennifer now. I feel like I'm Jennifer when I was growing up, which is crazy to me because we butted heads all the time, and I can't believe that I
so close
watch
now.
the way that they raise their kids now, and I'm like, what's going on? Who are these people? This is not the house that I lived in at all, but it's
You
also
were their guinea
super
pig.
awesome because my little brother and sister do have the ability to just be themselves, and and they're both pretty, typical normal kids and don't have anything to really be, struggle over at this point in their lives, but they may one day, and they have a family that they know that they can rely on when it comes to, they have my parents that are obviously there, and they have Brandon and I. They know that we're always a phone call away, and I just they're super lucky in that respect, and it's amazing to me that it's only been 10 years since all of this started happening in my life, and the world has come such a long way just in those 10 years from when I first stepped out of the closet and being
The
gay
first
was
closet.
a thing. Like, that's
Yeah.
just, it's so crazy to me. Like, when I came out, the year I came out, I think, is the year Glee put a gay person on TV, and it was like the first like major character on TV,
Right.
network television, that was like flamboyantly out and proud, and I so we've taken over TV now.
And soon
The gay
world.
agenda.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay, so you're back in Oklahoma now. So now, what are your plans?
So living day by day kind of at the moment. We're living on my husband's family farm out past Piedmont toward Okarche, so a little bit in the middle of nowhere in the
Nowhere.
sticks. But we've got, 2 horses on the property and 2 donkeys and some cows, and I just plan on filling up my time, spending time with those animals because they don't talk back, and working. I got my old job back that I had before I left, which is also super awesome. That I left as Alex, and they would like me to come back as Alexis, and they're being super supportive.
And where's that at?
The Metro Wine Bar in Oklahoma City. You should come in for dinner. It's great. I would love to wait on you and give you a great experience and offer some great wine. But other than that, I think our focus is really saving money to buy a house and hopefully have some mini-me's in the next 5 years, maybe.
Well, you also mentioned some community involvement. What's the organization that you're involved in
Yeah,
or
so
becoming involved in?
Brandon and I are on the advisory board for Other Options Incorporated in Oklahoma City.
Can you tell me what
what is
other
that?
options?
Other
is?
Options is an HIV and AIDS help clinic. They have a food pantry and a med service, and they transport people to doctor's visits. And Mary Arbuckle took over running the organization from Cookie, who started Other Options probably 30 plus years ago. And they make they send out over 2,000 Thanksgiving meals to the HIV community. They do different events all over town. Brandon and I tomorrow night are volunteering at the Black and White Ball in Oklahoma City.
And is that to raise money for
And
the
it's
organization?
to raise money for HIV. It's all nonprofit, so it's all off of donation. Mary Arbuckle is a mover and a shaker, and she always seems to find a way to get things done. But there's, of course, being a small organization, especially in Oklahoma under the new administration, they cut HIV funding from about $60,000 a year to $20,000 a year. And that, for an organization like that, is a major hit. And luckily, with the political climate in Oklahoma right now, people have stepped up to fill those voids and those gaps, and the organization is still doing well, but it takes all of these events that we do that seem a little bit pricey from time to time with galas and things like that, but that's how we feed people, and we get people clothes, and we get housing for people, and
medical attention.
And medical, and you can always donate to other options, anything. We're about to have our Thanksgiving drive. It's obviously about to be Thanksgiving, so even something as simple as going by other options, which is right on 50th and Portland area, like 51st, and donating all of your extra plastic Walmart bags, because we send all the food out in plastic bags and you can never have enough. Or going to help load up all those things, because it's 2,000 turkeys and 2,000 everything that you have to put into individual boxes to get going. And you know, we cook all the whole night before and start serving at like 6 a.m. So, you know, just getting involved in things like that really helps out a small organization like
Maybe
that.
Maybe we'll spend our Thanksgiving doing that. I don't have Thanksgiving plans yet. That sounds...
Well, yeah,
like
we would,
something-
yeah,
Can
and
Sophia,
we do it.
Can kids help volunteer?
Yeah, we do
Okay.
it. So where we do the, I could be incorrect on this, but where we've always done it in the past is at the cafe that is in the building, the same building as Hilo and Drunken Fry.
Okay.
The Sunny Side
Mhm.
or something like that. Breakfast, the diner always donates their space to us every year, so we can cook in their kitchen and serve the food out of their dining room. And it's a big assembly line, and it's a lot of fun. But they have events all the time. Drag Queen Bingo is like once a month at the Boom. It supports other options. Tramps will have a turnabout show, the Larry Crosby Turnabout Show next month. That completely goes to other options and Be the Change. So other options is my heart and soul's in it, because I have shopped in the food pantry, and I have gone there for housing, and I have gone there to get my meds, and I have been on the receiving end of all of those things. So to be sitting in a room with people and the ability to have my own health insurance and have my own way to provide my own food and have a way to support my life and build my life and be healthy, I just feel very honored to even get to be a part of that board and sit in on meetings like that, that I can give back to other people in that way, because there were times where that really is, I would not have eaten had I not gone through the food pantry on a Monday and filled up my kitchen. And they're always so gracious, and they know when they'll give you extra food if you look too skinny, and that, you know, they want you, they want the best for you. And Mary Arbuckle, I know I have bragged on her like a ton, but she just is one of the most genuine people I've ever met. It doesn't catch me as a surprise if I see a post on her at Facebook on a daily basis that she's sitting at the hospital or visiting somebody at the hospital after any crisis, whether anything in our community. She's just always there, and she has her own ranch that she's got to take care of. So she's a busy woman in her own personal life, and she dedicates all of her time, countless hours that she just donates so much of her time to just making sure that the rest of the community is okay, and she does it without complaint and without she does
things
it
in return.
right. She does it because it just is what
Sounds
she
like it's
feels
her
like
calling.
she needs to do.
Yeah.
And-
Because it needs to be done.
Yeah.
and I so appreciate being able to be involved in something like that and having an organization like that in Oklahoma, where people do need a place to, you know.
Well, I think it's
find
great
safe.
that you've been back for a week and you immediately got involved
Yes,
and
definitely.
got into an organization that obviously meant something to you and had done something for you, but that was your first instinct, was to come back and give back. And it seems like, from what you said, that you've been welcomed with open arms in the community here. And how have you seen, just from the 2 years that you were gone, do you see any changes in the LGBTQ community, or
No.
no?
Trans has been remodeled. No.
Has it gotten
I
bigger?
mean,
Are there more people?
no. Um, I only met 2 other trans people before I had moved away from Oklahoma last time, and since I've been back this time, I have met 6 in a week. So only meeting 2 in 21 years to meeting 6 just this past week is definitely makes my heart really happy that people, that this is the next big movement that's going to become quote unquote normal, even though to society that it's going to stop being something that people, even acknowledge happening. There's not going to be any reason to stare because people are just going to be educated on the fact that this is life and people live different lives. And
Well, it makes me
And that's
hopeful
okay.
that maybe Oklahoma, as we keep trashing it, is maybe not as backwards as we once were, and we're seeing some more progress.
I have seen
here.
a lot of Drew Edmondson signs. That gives me hope.
I'm hoping.
So-
Oh my God! Yes.
That gives me hope. But I have definitely seen a change in political climate in our community. There's definitely more people trying to step up and be more involved in things like running for house districts and things like that around town, and trying to give our community a voice in some way. And they've really been revitalizing 39th Street, which is nice because it has kind of been just ignored for years and years and years. It's just kind of, that was the gay people's spot, and they just kind of didn't take care of any part of that street. And it's nice to walk up and down there now, and there be plants and a sign that says 39th Street District, and park benches and nice trash cans and bike lanes, and all of those things really make it feel like
Safe.
we're not trying to hide
yeah.
in this dark alleyway anymore.
Right.
That we're
That's
trying
great.
to make
Yeah,
it
that's a
open
really good
for
point.
everybody.
Yeah.
For gay bars aren't just for gay people. Bars are bars,
Nope.
and there's really no need for them
I
to
love
even
going
be
there.
called
I go to the Alibi.
gay bars anymore. Like they just, I think they're trying to make 39th Street into something that is inclusive for everybody, and
That's
make, people who aren't part of the queer community still feel welcome to be a part of it. And that's something that I loved about Palm Springs is, yes, there was a street that all the gay bars were on, but it's funny to call anything a gay bar in Palm Springs because everything in Palm Springs is gay. It's literally the gayest place in the world by capita of people. It is. There's rainbow flags everywhere. All businesses, all restaurants. Like, it's just not abnormal. So it is a little weird for me coming back here because people don't really stare at me in Palm Springs, and you definitely get the people who, like, their bodies keep walking forward, but their head turn the whole time you're walking
You
by.
are also beautiful and tall.
That's what
So
I tell them.
That's what my
it's
husband tells me all the time.
it's not
So I try to
just
think about that
because-
sometimes.
Yes, you walk with such confidence, and your shoulders back, and you seem very
You
just
can thank Jennifer for
comfortable
that. Shoulders
in who
back.
you are. And I
Thank
just,
you.
I hadn't seen you in a couple years, and I was so happy to see you last night and today, and just see you really appear to be comfortable with who you are, and at peace with yourself, and just, you seem very zen, and I like it. You've got a good energy going
Feel
on.
really zen.
I can
right
tell.
now.
I can
and what's
tell.
so scary, what's so crazy about all of this is I told Brandon like a year ago that I would never move back to Oklahoma again. That I love Palm Springs, and I would never, ever, ever leave Palm Springs ever. And some things changed in life, and I saw some people around me's true colors, and I realized that I was going down another dark path with the wrong group of people, and all of a sudden moving back here became light instead of dark. And now that we're back, it's like this. I seriously am just. I've told people this a handful of times this week. I am the most at peace that I feel like I have ever been in my entire life, and I
It shows.
never would have thought I would have said that
It
living in
shows.
Oklahoma.
It shows.
So, thank you.
Well, can you give a shout out to, or do you want to give a shout out to anybody? other options? Where can we
you
find
have
more
social
information
media or
on them,
anything?
or your
Social media, Other Options Incorporated. I will share a link to that on my page
Yes.
also, and I will,
We can
once
put
this
one
is
to the
posted,
podcast,
I
yeah.
can post it on the podcast also. And they advertise all over Facebook all the time. So you can also, one thing I do suggest for Other Options is, everybody does their birthday fundraisers now on Facebook, and you set a goal for like $300, and most of the time it is met, and Facebook is becoming a really great way to easily get money to organizations like that, and it becomes uncomplicated, and you're not asking for anything, and
Yeah.
that's a great way to. So just look for those little Other
My
Options
birthday's coming up
buttons
next
all the
month,
time.
so I'll just do that.
There you go.
I'll go ahead and plan on doing that.
My Scorpio's over here.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming and sharing your story with us, and I love you. I'm just so happy to have you
Love
home.
you too.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm happy to be home. Thanks for having me. This
Yeah,
is really
Thank you
cool.
for being willing to share.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
You can contact the podcast at brokebrokenpodcast@gmail.com. The Broken Podcast can be found on Twitter @BrokeBrokenShow, on Instagram and Facebook @BrokeBrokenPodcast.